Hi, 8th grade. This video is for Friday morning, the 15th of May. This is lesson 410, Agreement of Subject and Verbs, part 1. And basically, we're looking at how the subject and the verb need to agree in number and in gender and so on in order for your sentence to work. It says a verb agrees with its subject in person and in number. Remember that a third person singular subject requires the verb form ending in s or es for a present tense verb. And all that means is that you take a verb like walk and then it becomes walks. That's third person singular, like he walks. You could say I walk, but then he walks. Or teaches. Teach becomes teaches when you say he teaches his class new concepts. So that's third person and it's singular. For instance, several towns recreate life at different times in the past. We use the base form of the verb with a plural subject. So we have recreate, which is the base form of the verb, and towns is plural, just like we made the example of the verb earlier. I apologize. Williamsburg recreates colonial life. That's the base form plus an S with a singular subject. So Williamsburg recreates. In this case, we put an S on the end of the main verb because Williamsburg is singular and it's third person. When we use doesn't and don't, it says use doesn't when the subject is third person singular. So he doesn't or she doesn't. Williamsburg doesn't have automobiles. Williamsburg would be like it as third person. So Williamsburg is third person singular and it would say Williamsburg doesn't have automobiles. We use don't in other cases, like second person, you don't, or they don't, or we don't, or I don't. All of those would be how we would apply don't. I don't know where Williamsburg is located. Then we have you as the subject. Use are and were with you, whether the subject is singular or plural. Do not use is or was when the subject is you. So we wouldn't say you is or you was. We say you are or you were. For instance, were you at the historic reenactment of our town's founding? Then we have there is and there are. Well, how do you know when to use the two? Because one is ending with is and one is using are. When there is or there are introduces a sentence, the subject follows the verb. Okay, so the subject is going to come after the verb is. Use there is or was or has been with singular subjects, and that makes sense because is singular. Use there are or were or have been with plural subjects. So we would say there is a historical village in Massachusetts. So village is the subject. Historical is an adjective, so we take that out. But village is the subject, so it needs to agree with there is. There are several reconstructed colonial towns. Several reconstructed colonial are all modifiers and they describe towns. So since towns is plural, we say there are. Be careful when using the contraction theirs. It must be followed by a singular subject. So make sure that you're understanding that theirs means there is, then it has to have a singular subject. And then when we have phrases between the subject and the verb, we call those interrupters. When there is an intervening phrase between the subject and the verb must agree with the subject, not with the noun or pronoun in the intervening phrase. So keep that in mind. It has to agree with the subject, not a noun or pronoun that's in that interrupting phrase or that intervening phrase. A place with historical sites is Williamsburg, Virginia. Is the verb and it has to agree with place, not Williamsburg, Virginia, because that is the intervening phrase. Several other towns, including Old Sturbridge Village, are historic sites. Are is the verb and it agrees with towns. Now, on this assignment, we are doing exercise 1 and exercise 2. Exercise 1, choose the correct form of the verb in each sentence. So in number 1, one of the most famous tourist attractions in the United States is Williamsburg, Virginia. So you just write the verb. Exercise 2, you're going to complete the sentences with don't or doesn't. So in number one, blank, you want to visit a historic town, we'd say don't. So each of these exercises will have one or two, or, one word answers for each. All right, those are due for Tuesday. Now I need to go back to lesson 4.9, which is model auxiliaries. I skipped over that for a minute, and we're going to go back to that one. That one's a little bit shorter for you to follow. Your model auxiliary, that was the lesson on Thursday, that is also due next week, Tuesday. Please make sure that you are working on your speeches, that you are practicing, because your Flipgrid speech, which is in the Google Classroom for Moral Focus, that is due on Wednesday by 5 o'clock. So have a great weekend.